courtesy to anyone, however smartly they might be dressed. By the hearth sat a huddled-up figure clad, seemingly, mostly in rags. That figure was apparently a woman, although even that would have been hard to distinguish except for the cap, which had once been white, and for what looked like the semblance of a petticoat. She was sitting mumbling to herself, and from time to time stirring the brew in her stock-pot. "Hey, my friend," said Sir Andrew at last, "we should like some supper. The citoyenne here," he added, "is concocting some delicious soup, I'll warrant, and my mistress has not tasted food for several hours." It took Brogard some few minutes to consider the question. A free citizen does not respond too readily to the wishes of those who happen to require something of him. "Sacrés aristos," he murmured, and once more spat upon the ground. Then he went very slowly up to a dresser which stood in a corner of the room. From this he took an old pewter soup tureen, and slowly, and without a word, he handed it to his better half, who, in the same silence, began filling the tureen with the soup out of her stock-pot. Marguerite had watched all these preparations with absolute horror. Were it not for the earnestness of her purpose, she would incontinently have fled from this abode of dirt and evil smells. "Faith, our host and hostess are not cheerful people," said Sir Andrew, seeing the look of horror on Marguerite's face. "I would I could offer you a more hearty and more appetizing meal, but I think you will find the soup eatable, and the wine good. These people wallow in dirt, but live well as a rule." "Nay, I pray you, Sir Andrew," she said gently, "be not anxious about me. My mind is scarce inclined to dwell on thoughts of supper." Brogard was slowly pursuing his gruesome preparations. He had placed a couple of spoons, also 2 glasses, on the table, both of which Sir Andrew took the precaution of wiping carefully. Brogard had also produced a bottle of wine and some bread, and Marguerite made an effort to draw her chair to the table and to make some pretence at eating. Sir Andrew, as befitting his role of lackey, stood behind her chair. "Nay, madame, I pray you," he said, seeing that Marguerite seemed quite unable to eat, "I beg of you to try and swallow some food. Remember, you have need of all your strength." The soup certainly was not bad. It smelled and tasted good. Marguerite might have enjoyed it, but for the horrible surroundings. She broke the bread, however, and drank some of the wine. "Nay, Sir Andrew," she said, "I do not like to see you standing. You have need of food just as much as I have. This creature will only think that I am an eccentric Englishwoman eloping with her lackey, if you'll sit down and partake of this semblance of supper beside me." Indeed, Brogard, having placed what was strictly necessary upon the table, seemed not to trouble himself any further about his guests. The Mere Brogard had quietly shuffled out of the room, and the man stood and lounged about, smoking his evil-smelling pipe, sometimes under Marguerite's very nose, as any free-born citizen who was anybody's equal should do. "Confound the brute," said Sir Andrew with native British wrath, as Brogard leant up against the table, smoking and looking down superciliously at these 2 sacrés Anglais. "In heaven's name, man," admonished Marguerite hurriedly, seeing that Sir Andrew, with British-born instinct, was ominously clenching his fist, "remember that you are in France, and that in this year of grace this is the temper of the people." "I'd like to scrag the brute," muttered Sir Andrew savagely. He had taken Marguerite's advice and sat next to her at table, and they were both making noble efforts to deceive one another by pretending to eat and drink. "I pray you," said Marguerite, "keep the creature in a good temper, so that he may answer the questions we must put to him." "I'll do my best, but, begad, I'd sooner scrag him than question him. Hey, my friend," he said pleasantly in French, and tapping Brogard lightly on the shoulder, "do you see many of our quality along these parts? Many English travellers, I mean." Brogard looked round at him over his near shoulder, puffed away at his pipe for a moment or two, as he was in no hurry, then muttered, sometimes." "Ah," said Sir Andrew carelessly. "English travellers always know where they can get good wine, eh, my friend? Now tell me, my lady was desiring to know if by any chance you happen to have seen a great friend of hers, an English gentleman who often comes to Calais on business. He is tall, and recently was on his way to Paris. My lady hoped to have met him in Calais." Marguerite tried not to look at Brogard, lest she should betray before him the burning anxiety with which she waited for his reply. But a free-born French citizen is never in any hurry to answer questions. Brogard took his time. Then he said very slowly, "Tall Englishman? Today? Yes. Yes, today," muttered Brogard sullenly. Then he quietly took Sir Andrew's hat from a chair close by, put it on his own head, tugged at his dirty blouse, and generally tried to express in pantomime that the individual in question wore very fine clothes. "Sacré aristo," he muttered, "that tall Englishman." Marguerite could scarce repress a scream. "It's Sir Percy right enough," she murmured, "and not even in disguise." She smiled in the midst of all her anxiety, and through her gathering tears at the thought of the ruling passion strong in death, of Percy running into the wildest, maddest dangers, with the latest cut coat upon his back, and the laces of his jabot unruffled. "Oh, the foolhardiness of it!" she sighed. "Quick, Sir Andrew, ask the man when he went." "Ah, yes, my friend," said Sir Andrew, addressing Brogard with the same assumption of carelessness. "My lord always wears beautiful clothes. The tall Englishman you saw was certainly my lady's friend. And he has gone, you say?" "He went, yes. But he's coming back. Here." He ordered supper. Sir Andrew put his hand with a quick gesture of warning upon Marguerite's arm. It came none too soon, for the next moment her wild, mad joy would have betrayed her. He was safe and well, was coming back here presently. She would see him in a few moments, perhaps. Oh, the wildness of her joy seemed almost more than she could bear. "Here," she said to Brogard, who seemed suddenly to have been transformed in her eyes into some heaven-born messenger of bliss. "Here, did you say the English gentleman was coming back here?" The heaven-born messenger of bliss spat upon the floor to express his contempt for all and sundry aristos who chose to haunt the chat gris. He muttered. "He ordered supper. He will come back. Sacré Anglais," he added, by way of protest against all this fuss for a mere Englishman. "But where is he now? Do you know?" she asked eagerly, placing her dainty white hand upon the dirty sleeve of his blue blouse. "He went to get a horse and cart," said Brogard laconically, as, with a surly gesture, he shook off from his arm that pretty hand which princes had been proud to kiss. "At what time did he go?" But Brogard had evidently had enough of these questionings. He did not think that it was fitting for a citizen, who was the equal of anybody, to be thus catechized by these sacres aristos, even though they were rich English ones. It was distinctly more fitting to his new-born dignity to be as rude as possible. It was a sure sign of servility to meekly reply to civil questions. "I don't know," he said surlily. "I have said enough. Voyons les aristos. He came today. He ordered supper. He went out. He'll come back. Voilà." And with this parting assertion of his rights as a citizen and a free man, to be as rude as he well pleased, Brogard shuffled out of the room, banging the door after him. End of chapter 22.